Okay, it is my privilege to introduce amongst you Preslav Nakov. Preslav is a professor at Mohammed bin Zayed University of AI. And before this, he was a principal scientist at the Qatar Computing Research Institute, QCRI, HKBU, where he's been leading several projects. So Preslav is known to all of us. He's known for making fundamental contributions in several topics, particularly in the area of fake news, propaganda, media bias, and as well as making users aware of what they're reading. He's the chair of several societies. He has won several Best Paper awards. So I can probably just speak for the next 30 minutes introducing him, but I'll probably not do that. I'll just hand it over to Preslav. So welcome, Preslav.
Okay, so thanks a lot for this invitation, and let's see. Okay, well, let me start with a question. Is fact-checking the solution to this information? Well, I mean, you might, okay, this is what kind of most people do, and there are many, many efforts we're focusing on that, and Duke Reporter Swap is going to tell you there are 300 active projects on that, and those are only the certified ones, so it's quite a lot, right? But then if you check how much has been fact-checked, certain big organizations have, I don't know, 15, 20,000 claims checked, but many others have just a few hundred, right? So definitely manually cannot cope with the problem. And there are kind of some crowdsourcing efforts, like the claim review schema is like collecting everything from all the organizations, 77,000 claims. Twitter started like this Birdwatch program, which is now renamed. They have 12,000, and then many of them are kind of contradictory because kind of people start fighting, and fake news is not like spam. Everybody knows spam is bad, but fake news, I mean, I like this one, you like that one, so it's kind of not black and white, so it's kind of harder, right? And the question is, what can you do? And one thing that you can do is, well, you can do things that normally you do you can automate the entire process, and this is where most efforts have been focusing on, but you can also do other things. You can try to make human fact checkers more productive. And this is something that has been much less studied, right? But it's very, very important. So actually, several major fact checking organizations that we have been talking to, they work on developing internal tools, right? And the question is, what do they want? We had a roundtable, we have invited some of them, and this is what they told us. They told us, well, first of all, I want to know what is interesting to fact check. Okay, there are so many claims. I want to know what is interesting. Number two, I want to know if somebody already fact checked it, maybe by another organization, maybe in another language, right? Number three, I want some evidence that is going to make me fast and more productive. Those are the three things. They don't want somebody to do it instead of them, right? Just like translation memories help human translators do faster, more consistent, and so on, high quality, but not really replace them, right? And this is something that is less studied. And so we have been running this Check That app, and we're going to have another iteration next year for several years now. And we have been looking into those steps. So we have been looking into kind of, is it worth fact checking, and also kind of different aspects, is it harmful, and so on. And then was it verified before, and then supporting evidence retrieval, and of course, actual fact checking. In parallel, we had like fake news detection. The difference is that fact checking is about a claim, fake news detection is about an article, right? And there are other levels that I'm going to talk about. And we have been doing this in different languages. You see Arabic, Bulgarian, German, English, Spanish, Dutch, Turkish. And we have been doing this on social media text, in political debates. And of course, down there, we have things that are about articles. Okay, what is worth fact checking? Actually, in this picture, there's one thing that is missing, and it's actually the very first thing, claim spotting. What is even a claim, right? And we are going to have a paper here coming in this conference at EMNLP about claim detection. So kind of, and this kind of a new news claim schema that we're proposing, so that you don't just have the claim, but you have kind of who made this claim, and also some other things like what is the topic of the claim, and what is the stance of the claim with respect to this topic. And those are additional elements that you might want to have. And we are doing this with kind of defining this as question answering tasks to do it, with few short warning. I'm not going to go into much detail here, telling you just about the task, right? Another aspect is, okay, so imagine you have a political debate, and there are so many claims that are being made, okay? And normally checking a claim takes 1 day, 2 days, sometimes a week, okay? So it's a lot, very consuming. And major fact-checking organizations in different countries are telling us, we can check 1 claim per day, the entire organization, or maybe 2. That's it. That's our capacity. Now, imagine that there was a political debate between, 2 presidential candidates in the US. Just finished. You assembled several journalists, and this night you can check 10 claims or 20 claims. The question is, which one are you going to check? There are 1,300 sentences on average in a political debate. Some contain more than one claim. You don't want to spend hours to see what is interesting, right? Kind of, you want to know it now, okay? And the question is, how do you know it? Well, I mean, you can actually check in previous debates what was selected to be fact-checked, right? And you can try to train a system that, you know, tries to see what is an interesting claim. And you can have all kinds of features there, right? Kind of about, you know, what is the topic? Is it similar to previously fact-checked claims? And who is saying it? And how the other opponent kind of responds to it? Are there numbers mentioned? And so on and so forth. He kind of just telling you about the problem, right? And we had systems for that. And you can also define the problem in political, in social media, of course. There are many fact-checking organizations, journalists that are following the social media accounts of celebrities, of politicians, and they want to spot interesting claims. Okay, and there are many things, but only some of them are interesting. And here's one example, right? It's by Eric Trump. He says, okay, you know, because the media are not going to fact check this, I'm going to show you, you know, Donald Trump is donating his salary to fight the coronavirus. And I guess that, you know, you'd agree that this is a check-worthy claim. There's also a check, you know. By the way, do you think it's true? Yes. Do you think it's false? Okay. Okay, it's true. It was fact-checked, it's true. Okay. But here we are not interested whether it's true or not, right? Kind of, we're interested in that this is interesting. And I guess you would agree this would be interesting, right? The question is, what makes a claim interesting? Again, we can go and we can ask fact checkers, you know, among the tweets that you considered, which ones you considered good, interesting, and which not. And let's train a system on this. And actually, we were in contact with a fact checking organization, Neutral, the leading one in Spain, right, which gave us this kind of data, but many others didn't. So we actually did our own annotation and looked into the literature and came up with this criteria. Number one, it has to be viral or has the potential to be viral. Otherwise, why do you bother? Okay. Then it should contain a claim and a verifiable factual claim. Otherwise, what are you checking, right? And then it should be potentially false, should be potentially harmful. Okay. Should be potentially of public interest. And those are not yes and no criteria, but you are asking human annotators first to answer these questions and then to answer the last one, right? And when you do annotations like this, even if you are just interested in whether it's worth fact-checking or not by professional fact-checkers, it turns out that if you train a system, I mean, here just partial reserves for English and all that, if you just like fine-tune, let's say, BERT, of course, they are kind of more sophisticated systems, but here the point is that when you decompose the problem into those components, if you just do a single task learning, is it worth fact-checking or not, you are 62%, you know, accurate. But if you actually do multitask learning, trying to also predict whether it's likely to be false, likely to be harmful, and of public interest, you are at 76%, right? And actually some other tasks also benefit. The message here is that it actually pays to decompose the claim into interesting subclaims, right? And try to address those together. And we have some demos for these that work in different languages that kind of, you know, can answer all these questions in the context of COVID-19. And kind of we have also data set on tweets, right? Quite a lot, tweets in multiple languages. Now let's look into the other problem, detecting previously fact-checked claims, right? So what's the problem with automatic fact-checking? The problem is that people don't trust it. At the same time, people do trust human fact-checkers, okay? And we have been talking to them. They are telling us now, let's say, I don't know, let's say before the elections in Italy, okay, the traffic to the fact-checking websites, you know, went several times up, which means that people want to check, right? So they do trust. And the problem is, okay, so imagine that I'm, you know, there's a political debate, and I have something, and I say, okay, or I'm doing an interview, and I say, beep, Mr. President, my AI is telling me that you are now 97% likely to be lying. Can you please elaborate? Why are you lying now? Can you do that? No, because you don't know how this works, okay? But if it actually tells you, look, you just said something, and this something was previously fact-checked by, I don't know, this trusted organization, here's what he said. Here's what was fact-checked. Here's also the article. If you want, you can go scroll and you can get additional information. Well, you're much more confident. Now you can go after the politician, put him on the spot in real time, right? In an interview, in a political debate, right? And that makes a lot of a difference, right? So this kind of another aspect. And the other thing is, actually people sometimes, even in social media, they kind of say, oh, this is not true. and point to a fact-checking article, which also kind of shows that there's impact. And many other use cases. For example, major fact-checking organizations like Full Fact in UK, after they fact-check something, they actively monitor media and social media and so on and TV shows to see if politicians keep repeating the same claim. And they contact them and say, look, we have fact-checked this, why do you keep saying it? Do you want to make a statement, right? So kind of they want their work to have impact. And the other thing is kind of, yeah, you want to kind of, yeah. So this is kind of, you know, spotting claims that were previously fact-checked, right, in different aspects. And you might want, actually, we have a paper here where the goal is I upload a document and your goal is like to re-rank the sentences so that those that are most likely to contain claims that were previously fact-checked come on the top, okay? And then for each of those, you have a short list of evidence, right? Those are the articles that I think are verifying it, right? And this is the context of the debate that I was talking to you about. Actually, like 2 years ago, we introduced the task, right? A fact-checking by returning actually previously fact-checked claims. And I should tell you, this is not an easy task. We had a paper earlier this year where we have been discussing. So especially, let's say, in the context of political debates, look at this statement here. Clinton says, okay, what is it? I waited until it had actually been negotiated because I did want to give the benefit of the doubt to the administration. This claim was fact-checked by human fact-checkers. But actually, you cannot really understand it without understand what is it and so on and so forth, right? And actually, the same kind of thing happens when you match a claim. You should not match it against the title and the normalized claim in the target article. You should match it against the entire fact-checking article because there can be other instances of the claim that are a little bit paraphrased. Actually, kind of, you know, your recall jumps a lot and the system performance if you match against the whole thing. So kind of, if you want to consider the context on the source side and the context on the target side, and maybe kind of have multi-hop reasoning, you know, and so on and so forth. So kind of, it's not an easy task. Okay, so now let me go to the next question. Okay, we established that fact-checking as such, you know, manually done cannot scale. Even if we make people more productive, okay, we make them more productive 2 times, 3 times, doesn't change much, right? Maybe automatic fact-checking is a solution, right? And there has been a lot of work on that. And you can do it different ways. You can do compared to previously fact-checked claims, you can do it using tables, right? I mean, we have actually a paper coming on that, on fact-checking claims here in this conference, on fact-checking claims against, you know, tables. So basically what we do is we, here in this specific case, we generate kind of many claims automatically from tables, and kind of we are pre-training a language model on that, and there are details that you can come and see. You can do fact-checking claims against Wikipedia. Again, kind of we have some systems on that. Many people are working on this. There's the fever task, right? So kind of, and the idea is that if there's a, you know, place in Wikipedia that supports the claim, it's true. If, you know, if there's a kind of sentence or a couple of sentences in Wikipedia that, you know, disagree with the claim, it's false. Yeah, that's kind of the idea. And you can also do fact-checking, let's say, in social media, right? Kind of, we can look. So you have a claim, you can see how it evolves over time, whether people agree with the claim, whether they disagree, whether they dispute it. Kind of, you can also look into who are those people, can I trust them, what are the links between them, right? And then kind of, if there's a link to an article, you can see what is this article doing. Is this a known fake news article or not? Or kind of what is the site that published it? Is it a reliable website or not? And kind of what are the sites it connects to? And actually we have labels only for some. You know about some articles, about most you don't. You know about some websites, about most you don't, right? You don't know typically anything about the users. And now this is a heterogeneous graph, and you can kind of reason over this graph, right? Try to make an inference whether this is likely true or false. And we have done this, kind of, we had a best paper award on this 2 years ago, but the point is that this is just like an exemplar, kind of, there are several different systems, kind of, that just do this in social media, right? Another thing that I want to bring here is that multilinguality is very important, okay? So kind of most of this work, so for example, this is done in the fake news net, which is one kind of famous data set for this. And it's composed of PolitiFact and GossipCap, those two here. But kind of multilinguality is important. So earlier this year, we developed a new data set based on links to articles that were shared at least 100 times in Facebook over 2.5 year period, and that were actually manually fact-checked by fact-checkers. And the interesting thing is that this is multilingual, okay? And you see kind of a lot of Italian, Spanish, French, German, Portuguese, and so on. So, and kind of going multilingual is very, very important, okay? Because this information goes across languages. Okay, and so I mentioned kind of, another way to do fact checking is like crowd checking. I mean, I mentioned that Twitter has this kind of bird watcher program. Unfortunately, not. I mean, it's still in beta, but it's not so popular yet. I do think there is value in that. So we had kind of earlier this year, we had this paper where we had been looking into kind of this crowd checking. So where people post, so kind of somebody claims something about ivermectin and whatever, and then somebody says, okay, this is true or this is not true, and puts a link to a fact-checking article, okay? And we have very quickly collected 300,000 of those. And for comparison, data sets for, previously fact-check claims have about 1,000 claims pairs because it's kind of not easy to do it. And here we have 300,000. Of course, there is noise. We estimate 60 to 80,000 to be good, and we kind of developed a way to learn from this kind of noisy data, right? But it's something that you can do also in other languages, and it's kind of quite powerful, right? So kind of leveraging the wisdom of the crowd. If you think about it, how did we defeat spam? Spam was a huge problem 20 years ago. Well, technological solution, but mainly based on crowdsourcing. Every day, I mean, you don't get that much spam. And when we do, they say, oh, this is not spam. I move it in this folder. Actually, this is a vote. And the spammers cannot evolve quick enough and cope up with hundreds of millions of people actually, giving training data to the, to the platform. So I think that this is a good way forward. The problem is that spam, everybody agrees is bad. Fake news, many people say, no, this is actually not fake news. This is true and this is good and all that. So that's the problem. Okay. So, but the question is, even with automatic fact checking, can we fact check every single claim in the world? Okay. And these days you can also kind of automatically generate it, right? But not only that, the problem is that the fake news is written in a very viral way, right? It goes much further and much faster. So there was a study in Science 2018 that shows that yeah, it's 6 times further and faster and all that. And there's actually another study, this one on the left, which is much less famous, but it shows that some very viral claims, 50% of their lifetime spread happens in the first 10 minutes. What does this mean? If it's going to hit, I don't know, 100 million people, the first 50 million are hit in the first 10 minutes. Okay, in 10 minutes, how can you fact check it? I mean, I don't know if this is going to happen. If it's brand new claim that is just now made, there's no fact-checking article for it, right? There are no kind of news articles written. I don't know, kind of, I mean, it just takes time, to do all this, right? So what can you do? Well, you can go after the source. This is what journalists do, right? They ask, are there 2 or 3 trusted sources that actually, can do it? And if you think about it, see, there are levels of fact-checking. So you can fact-check a claim, you can fact-check a news article, you can fact-check a website, and you can also kind of, fact-check an entire community of, potentially coordinated people. And we have been looking at all levels, right? So here I'm talking about the source. Now, the point is, actually, crowd fact-checking works in certain cases. So if I just put a claim, it is false claims, I put it there in social media, okay, and that's it, nothing. It dies very fast. People say, I don't find it anywhere else. I mean, you made this up. I mean, where is it? There's not enough information. And basically say this is false, and it dies very fast. Now, because it's just rumor and you have to support it. How do you support it? People want information. They want an article. Now, this article has to live on a website. And doing an entire website is a lot of effort, right? You cannot do one new brand website just for, for the fake news claim that you have made now. You're going to reuse them. So, and then if you do that, we can actually kind of actively monitor and have a list of those websites. And next time you put something, I like to say you can fact check you before you have even written it. Because the moment when you write it and when you put a link, if you're serious about it, you put a link to a website, you can say, haha, we know you, right? I mean, you can do the same kinds of things with users as well, but I personally don't work on user for ethical reasons. There's also kind of no training data and all that, right? Kind of it's much easier to work with media. But at the end of the day, you need to have an article, right? And now, if you think of this definition of the task where you're profiling entire news websites, it's easier task because you don't need to make a decision just based on one claim or one article. You can actually get information from many different places. You can look into okay, what they have written, but not one article. I can go and have a few thousand articles from this news outlet and get much better idea, right? I can look into the Twitter profiles and social media profiles, how they self-represent. If they have a YouTube channel, I can go there and can analyze this YouTube channel. I can see in the speech signal, in the images, what happens there. I mean, not only what they say, but how they say it. Is there a lot of emotion? It is kind of not necessarily there in the text, but kind of there in the speech. I can look into what is written about them, let's say in Wikipedia, if they have a page. I can look into who is reading them, how they self-represent, what is their short description, and so on and so forth. I can look into other things, what kind of images they have, are they manipulated, who is hosting them, what is their security certificate, what is their web tracker, because those people don't want the major ones, because they're going to analyze them, right? And they're going to know that those guys are not good, right? And yeah, so kind of we have been doing all this. And actually, we have yet another paper here, right? This is on graph neural networks. So here, looking here into the audience overlap. So basically, you look and you say, okay, how many, if I take a news outlet like, let's say, CNN and BBC, how much audience overlap they have? Suppose it's 30%. And CNN and Fox News, how much overlap do they have? Suppose it's 3%. Okay, now what does this tell me? Well, it tells me that, those two kind of are more similar and those two are kind of less similar or something like that, right? So we are getting information from Alexa Rank, which start with, let's say, 1,000 websites for which you know whether they are factual or not and whether they are biased left, center, right or not. And then you say, okay, for each of them, let me get the top 5 most similar ones and the percentage of audience overlap. And then recursively, you're going to say now the top 5 of those top 5, and so on and so forth. And after 4 or 5 levels, you get into a graph with, let's say, 200,000 nodes. And you know for about 1,000 of them, the truth label. And then you kind of do graph neural networks and reasoning over the graph, where you put also the textual information, the other things that I have been talking about, and you kind of try to label the rest of the graph, right? And then there's a connection between factuality and bias. This is the media bias chart. And it shows us that the extreme left and the extreme right media are kind of non-factual, okay? And kind of the ones in the center are kind of more factual, right? I mean, okay, this is a general correlation, right? This is not, and you can disagree about this specific one and all that, but kind of this is something that is there in the media bias chart and kind of in the different data sets that we have been looking into, let's say from media bias fact check, from all sides and so on, you see a similar kind of correlation. And then this means that it makes sense actually to try to model factuality and bias jointly in a multitask learning setup. We have been doing that, right? And also trying also to model them into an ordinal regression in the sense that if I confuse an extreme left with a left, that's a small mistake. Extreme left with extreme right, that's a huge mistake, right? Kind of you want to if you have like extreme left, center, and so on, kind of. And you can have other auxiliary tasks like hyperpartisanship, centrality, and so on. Another aspect, propaganda. Now, what is propaganda? It's a communication tool where the goal is to influence the opinions and the actions of people with specific goal in mind, okay? Now, if you pay attention, propaganda is kind of orthogonal to disinformation. So, okay, I didn't tell you about the definition of disinformation, but definition is something that is false and also harmful, okay? So here, propaganda can be true, can be false. Can be good, can be bad. It's not part of the definition. It's just like how we are being convinced of something and somebody has a goal behind it. It can be good goal, can be bad goal. Okay. And so now there has been a lot of work on, is this text propagandistic? Is the website propagandistic? And we have been also doing that. But it's important actually to understand the specific propaganda techniques that are being used to manipulate us. And they are, roughly speaking, 2 kinds. Some are emotional, appeal to fear, appeal to emotions, name calling, and so on, slogans. And others are kind of logical fallacies and things that don't make sense logically, like, I don't know, red herring or bandwagon or whataboutism, strongman, and so on. And we have actually developed, corpora for that and some kind of multitask learning frameworks for this. That's a demo that we had, which kind of, you can see here some examples of that, right? Kind of way it's trying. It's something like named entity recognition, but it's harder task because the spans can be longer. So for example, here you have Anthony Fraudulent Fauci is the king of misinformation. That's name calling, right? But this is kind of a long thing, right? And so on. You have Scamdemic as a, audit language and so on. Okay. And yeah, that was a runner-up for a best demo award 2 years ago. Now we have done this. Multilinguality, I told you, is very important. Actually, we have here in this same, actually tomorrow in the Arabic NLP workshop, we are going to present the results of the shared task on propaganda detection in Arabic. So kind of we had those things in Arabic. And actually, in collaboration with the European Commission, we are working on we have a shared task at CMEVAL on detecting propaganda techniques in the news across multiple languages. So we have English, we have French, German, Italian, Russian, and Polish. And we have not only propaganda, we have also framing, and we also have kind of detecting the type of article. Is it a news, or is it opinion, or is it kind of satire and stuff like that? And this is somehow organized. The techniques are a little bit revised compared to the previous. There are like 22 of those. And the first question you ask, is it a call or is it a statement? If a call is like slogan or stuff like that. If it's a statement, is it manipulating the wording or is it an argument? His kind of emotional stuff. If it's about an argument, is it like attack on reputation, or is it really about the topic? Is it about the topic? Is the distraction like strawman, kind of paraphrasing what you say in a way that I can defeat, but this is not exactly what you said, right? And then or maybe it's relevant. Okay, if it's relevant, then the next question is it oversimplifying the things? It can be cause of oversimplification. Oh, this happened because of that. Well, there are kind of multiple reasons, right? And so on and so forth. Now, I told you that, the propaganda and fake news are orthogonal, but they're actually connected because this is the way that we are being persuaded, right? If you don't use propaganda, it's not going to be viral. Nobody's going to kind of, get upset and emotional and all that. It's not going to work. It's not going to spread. Okay, so it's very important. And now, data sets for fake news detection, they are limited. There are not that many manually fact-checked kind of articles that are fake news. You have like, just a few thousand. And what people do, well, you want to have these big transformers. So what do? Well, sometimes you just go and generate fake news, okay? You generate fake news and then you train a fake news detector on those machine-generated fake news. It's important for two reasons. First of all, there's more machine-generated content now. So it's important to know whether something was machine-generated and likely fake news in the first place. Second of all, because actually those models trained on those generators are actually good, has been shown to be good at detecting human-written fake news, okay? And the problem is that when you just generate, you have no control over there, and they forget the propaganda techniques, but they're important. Okay, so we have actually changed the way of generation so that we actually kind of insert there certain kind of propaganda techniques, kind of loaded language, appeal to authority, something like we would insert a citation from a person who might be an authority on the topic, right? It actually turns out that it's much more convincing to people, and actually if you train systems on this, they are better detecting human written fake news as well. That's still not published. Now, the fourth level that I was talking about claims, articles, websites. Now it's about kind of entire communities, right? So kind of we have communities, and we have been looking into the UK elections and different communities around different political parties and other activists. And we looked into the kind of the connection between propaganda and coordination. So now the coordination is a matter of degree. So you have like a small set of users that are very coordinated working together. And then kind of this a little bit bigger group that is also kind of coordinated, but a little bit less, and so on and so forth. So it's kind of coordination is a continuum. And here it's like on the x-axis, right? And the y is like the degree of propaganda. And now what you would expect is that as you get into higher and higher coordination, you move to the right, the propaganda would go up, right? Because those are the more hardcore users there of this kind of the core users of this community. But actually it turns out that for some it about stays the same, so even goes down. Why is that? Well, those are actually grassroots movements that are not political, that are not controlled by anybody. And that was kind of an interesting finding. So it was the best paper award earlier this year. And the last thing I want to tell you about is multimodality. Okay, so that's another very important problem in social media, because memes are much easier, faster to consume, and much more kind of influential. If you just tweet something, you don't put an image, people don't notice your tweet so much, right? So it's important. So we have been working into detecting the specific use of propaganda techniques in a meme, right? And here you need to look into both the text but also the image, and they work together, right? And of course, those are much more, influential. We had a shared task on this, and then you might be kind of, okay. So the reason, okay, the term fake news. Let me tell you about that, right? So fake news is misleading term because kind of misleads people to think of false news, right? Looking into factuality. But disinformation is a better term, which is looks into something that is false but also harmful. And the reason why we started looking into fake news is because of the harm that they can potentially do. And that's a very important aspect. And the question is this meme harmful? Okay, not only whether it's true or not. And who is being the target? And it can be harmful for different reasons, because it's hate speech or a personal attack or fake news and so on. And we have been looking into also who is attacked, an individual, organization, or a community or society. And kind of looking into the two modalities, right? Kind of the text and the image. And another development of that is looking into the specific entities that are mentioned, kind of that appear either in the image. So, okay, I give you a meme and I run on it, I extract the text, that's easy. I also extract the entities that are mentioned in the text, the named entities. And I also kind of analyze the image with, say, some Google Vision API or something to tell me, who are in the interesting subjects on this one. And I have a list. And it tells me Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, White House, Donald Trump, and the Democrats. This is what I get from automatic, even with the typo. Okay. Now the question is, which of those are harmfully attacked in this meme? That's the question, right? And this kind of a multimodal task. We have been looking into that. And then kind of another development was to see how people are being framed. Okay, again, kind of I give you the list of entities, and I need to tell me who is the hero, who is the villain, who is the victim. So, for example, here, like, I don't know, welcome to the Republican Party, where the points are made up and the poor, women, minorities don't matter. Okay, so now here, Republican Party is portrayed as a villain, right? And women, minorities, and so on, kind of the poor are framed, kind of are portrayed as victims, right? And here, the Green Party is actually the bad guys in Jewish time and so on. Kind of like, it's actually interesting, right, to see the narratives, of things from automatic analysis. Actually, yeah, it says work with, okay, that he, okay, anyway. We have been also kind of looking into automatically generating the explanations about why this is happening, right? And actually, yeah. So I talked to you about the terminology, right? So we had fake news, and then we started talking about disinformation. And in the time of the pandemic, we started talking about the infodemic. This is something very interesting. So the World Health Organization, immediately after declaring the pandemic, I went on their website and I found there as number 2 in their top 5 priorities listed fighting the infodemic. Okay, so think about it. They already realized that it's going to be very important, number 1. Number 2, they had a new term for this. Number 3, the term doesn't care whether it's true or false. The term cares about the potential harm that this can do. Okay, and think about the evolution of the term, going from fake news that sounds like false news, really focus on factuality, to disinformation, which is a term that was adopted by international organizations and journalists and fact checkers, which is something that focuses equally on factuality and on harmful, to infodemic, where the focus is really on harmfulness. And if you think about it, the US elections 2016, it was fake news, and people started doing fact checking, right? 2020 elections, it was about harm, and other kinds of things. So kind of, people started pointing, kind of going from this side to that side. And I think that both sides are important, right? But this is also kind of how people are talking about the infodemic, right? See, this is from February 12, 2020, very, very early on. Oh, this is this new term infodemic, right? The coronavirus is bring us the first true social media infodemic. And see the subtitle, Panic Racism. It's not about whether it's true or not. It's about kind of how it's framed and kind of what are the consequences of that, right? And he's kind of the terminology, right? We have disinformation, which is kind of the term that, I don't know, United Nations, European Union, NATO, World Health Organization have been using, right? It's something that is both false and intends to do harm. If it's just false but not harmful, that's misinformation. Is it harmful but not false? For example, somebody broke the web server of Dr. Fauci or of Hillary Clinton, put his real emails there on the web, that's malinformation. And he's kind of the evolution of the terminology that I was telling you about, right? From fake news to disinformation, which is kind of balanced, to infodemic, which is really focusing on the harm. And we have been kind of looking into this early on into the pandemic. We developed a taxonomy where we have been looking into both aspects, and kind of it was like multiple two-level taxonomy and so on. We have been looking into also both positive and negative aspects. I don't want to go much into this because it's very interesting work, but I realize by now it's a little bit outdated because luckily kind of, I see very few people with masks here. And the reason is that, the pandemic is kind of luckily kind of going back out. Okay, I'm about to finish. One question. The last question is, can we win this war? What do you guys think? Okay, so what is it? Maybe 3 years ago, I was invited by the Interparliamentary Assembly together with two other experts from 2 other countries. And there were 800 members of parliament from 180 countries. And for 3 hours, they are asking us all kinds of questions. But basically, I can summarize it with this. Okay, tomorrow, when we come back to our parliament, what legislation should we vote to be done with this forever? Okay. And of course, the answer is certain legislation has a part. Okay, there are things that you can require, political advertisement, or you can require certain things about, websites or social media and so on. Certain kind of hate speech is, controlled in certain countries and so on. It does have space, but, really, we also want fact-checking efforts. We are developing tools as researchers. We need the cooperation of social media. It's happening on their platforms, and so on and so forth. So basically, the short answer is it's a complex problem, doesn't have an easy solution, but we can cut a little bit from here, a little bit from here, a little bit from here, and gradually reduce it. But still, do we know whether we can succeed? And the answer is actually yes, we can succeed. And the reason I'm telling you this, because they are examples. And the example is Finland. Finland, back in 2014, they started a very aggressive media literacy campaign targeting all levels of society, focusing on the schools, to teach people not to trust everything. If something makes you very emotional, maybe there's a reason for that. This image, if it looks suspicious, you can do reverse image search and see whether it's really from this event in the first place, and stuff like that, right? And they're saying that it's not a problem anymore. It's not of that scale that it used to be. And I think that this is a great example, and it shows us that we can do to fake news what we have done to spam. Spam still exists. The goal, we cannot eradicate it. We're still going to get, but it's not the problem that was 15, 20 years ago. You open your mailbox and 90% is spam. It was terrible, right? Now we can do the same with the fake news. So kind of education, promoting media literacy is one very important element. As I said, this is not the only thing, but this is one thing that is very important. I mean, if you think about it, the reason why we are sharing it is there are bots, there's this, there's that, but actually we are sharing it. If we don't share it, it's not going to be viral. If I send spam to 1,000 people, who is going to share it further? 1 or 2 maybe. Okay, but the fake news, if I share it very viral fake news to 1,000 people, it can reach millions. Okay, and we need to stop that. And we need kind of to stop. And then also the people that are doing it, they are going to lose interest because it's not going to work. Just like spam doesn't quite work anymore, right? And of course, Finland has one of the best media literacies in Europe, one of the best education systems. And to conclude, just before the pandemic, I was in India, invited there at a conference, and I found the tomb of Gandhi, and I found something very curious. He said, "Don't listen to rumor. If you do, don't believe it. If you listen to Gandhi, the problem is solved." Thank you. Questions? Yes.
Thank you for the interesting talk. I had a question exactly about the last topic that I was thinking I'm going to ask something about.
Which topic?
The one, how can we prevent this? So for instance, in
Yeah.
South Africa, with respect to the fake news for the COVID, they basically said, look, if you have fake news, you go to jail. And actually in the regular news in South Africa, there has been very little fake news if I compare it to other countries. But that may be subjectively me, I don't know if it is actually the numbers of fake news were indeed less. And I don't know if that is also in other countries. Do you know that such kind of legislation makes it different on the number of fake news articles for, say, like national news outlets in different countries, or is that something still to look into as a way to prevent it? Because if you did it and you were published, we will go to jail, basically.
Right. Okay. I know several countries. Okay. So first of all, correlation is not causation. So, and we don't have that many examples, right? So that many samples to do it. But this is a very interesting observation because my kind of I'm actually okay. On the one hand, I'm happy to hear that there are countries where kind of the fake news during the pandemic, during the infodemic was somehow kept under control. Whether it was caused by legislation or by something else, you know, that's a different story. I mean, I'm personally skeptical that kind of, you know, I mean, you can declare many things illegal, but if there's technology there, I mean, there are going to be certain people that are going to do it online. It's not that easy to get where it's coming from. And I was talking about, and many of those things don't even originate into the country, right? But it might actually have an effect, and I'll tell you where. I mean, I don't think this is going to stop people that are doing it on purpose with certain kind of goal in mind, you know, with the goal to manipulate the population in a certain way. Maybe for financial gains. I want to sell more vaccines. I don't want my competitor to sell. I mean, I don't know, kind of, you know, or can be political or can be other things, right? In many cases, kind of those things are happening. So those people probably are not going to stop them. They're going to find a way. I mean, the internet has not disintegrated into national spaces. It's kind of harder, but it might actually kind of scare people into sharing it. And this is going to limit a lot the spread. Limiting the spread is a big thing. Okay, so I mean, there are several things that I have mentioned, right? I mean, but limiting the spread is a key because it spreads virally. And for example, I can give you another example where how fake news was somehow limited to some extent. India. In India, the government worked with Facebook to kind of to do something about it. And what they did was they said over there, it's primarily done in WhatsApp. Okay, it's not fake. It's not Facebook. It's not Twitter, right? It's WhatsApp. And basically what they did, they limited the size of the groups, the maximum size of a group, and they limited the number of times that you can share something. So if I do it, I cannot share it in like 20 groups. I can share it in like, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 groups, whatever it is. And the group can be, I don't know, maybe 250 people or something, not like 20,000. So kind of this has certain kind of control. So, and I think that's a good move, right? Kind of, you know, somehow attacking directly the spread without kind of, yeah. But in the time of the pandemic, the battle was lost. I personally come from Bulgaria. This is the case, I mean, where even though the government and okay, there are 3 or 4 governments, there was also political instability, but kind of in the mainstream media were, you know, concerned about the pandemic and all that. Kind of the vast majority of people were believing all kinds of conspiracy theories, over contradicting, and the same person kind of believes 5 or 6 that are all contradicting with each other. And somehow the battle was lost. I don't know how it happened, but so I'm surprised that there are countries where it was kept under control because it went out of control everywhere. Yeah. Questions?
Thank you so much for the interesting talk. I'm just wondering about the intervention part. So you kind of touch upon it. Recently, I heard about this pre-bunking, this inoculation series where you intentionally expose some users to some level of misinformation, but then you tell them explicitly that they're misinformation in this and this and this way. What do you think about that? And I guess the question is, now that we have all these ontology, all these labeled data set on propaganda, misinformation, whether something is worth checking and so on, like how does it actually translate into things that we can do to, I guess, ultimately prevent the spread of misinformation, disinformation, and so on?
Okay. So limit in a way, to me, this kind of pre-bunking, right? Kind of teaching users, it's an element, is one way to do media literacy. And I have already shown you that, we have examples where this works. I know several other countries have similar programs, right? And to me, this is a very important element. And I mean, you can even imagine before I open an account in social media, I might be asked to take some little media literacy kind of, thing and kind of do a little exam and kind of, pass it and only then. So okay, to me, the important thing is that people think for themselves so that they don't get so easily influenced. And that's one. And the second thing is, if in doubt, don't share it. And actually, it's better to share it even with the purpose to say this is fake and you share it. But you are actually now, people are going to forget that it's fake. You are kind of contributing to the spread, right? If you see it, if you kind of answer in the thread saying this is fake, potentially even like pointing to a fact-checking article, that's different. But if you kind of share it and say this is fake, people are going to forget it's fake. Next time they share it, they might just share the link, right? And you're actually contributing to the spread. So, well, what can we do? We can do many things. As I said, this is kind of not a simple problem. It kind of doesn't have a simple solution. We need tools that can detect it. We need intervention strategies. I personally don't work on intervention. I mean, I'm curious to learn about this, but, I can mostly working into detection. What journalists do is very important, kind of it's raising awareness. At the end of the day, the more people know about the problem, and I mean, it's good that it has become an important societal problem in the sense that people realize it has been, but kind of that people realize, and we're having this discussion. And so like any new phenomenon, we need to adapt to it. You cannot stop progress. We cannot do it. But I mean, again, we can do a little bit with legislation. We can do a little bit with promoting media literacy. We can do a little bit with fact checking. We can do a little bit with those social media platforms doing something about it. I mean, think about it. Not only spam, in the search engines, when they started, I don't know, let's say 30 years ago, whatever, initially, the kind of content that you find when you search was not necessarily good. There were even kind of some startup companies, search engines, that had this, that wanted kind of, were giving you results and they wanted you potentially to pay to get even better results or something like that, right? Over time, they figured it out. And now, if I want to kind of, I personally, I don't know about you, there's personalization going on as well, but I rarely find some clearly bad content when I search in search engines, okay? Which means that they have figured it out. So they do have a technology. I'm not saying that social media is different. It's user-generated content, okay? So there's probably not that much good content in the first place. Second of all, they cannot return you something from all the social network. They have to show you something from your friends. And if all your friends are putting kind of conspiracy theories, what are you going to get? There's nothing else they can choose, right? So kind of it's a little bit harder problem, but still, I think that, also the business model is different. What is the benefit of a search engine if they show you something bad? I mean, you're going to go to a different, one. But here in the social media, I can actually kind of comment on it, and that's an engagement. I can see more advertisements. So it's good for business because you are they're optimizing for engagement. So it's kind of a different business model. Another way to solve it might be actually to look into another business model. So for example, there are certain companies that are doing that. They're profiling media. And again, I believe a lot into profiling media, moving this into a higher level, right? And then after they have, they are contacting advertisers and they are telling them, did you see where here's a snapshot? And they even publicly share this in social media. I have seen this multiple times, say, look, this famous brand appears on this bad website and see the content, and they have a snapshot of super bad website and a big world brand advertisement showing there. And they go there to the brand and they say, do you want your thing happening there, right? And they say no. They say, okay, you can pay us, we can give you a list of websites that you can go to the social media company and say, please, my advertisement should not appear there. Now, the thing is, if there are more companies that are concerned about this, those platforms are going to say, we have to do something about it because, we are losing, advertisers, right? We're losing money. So I'm again, there are many developments going on in parallel. The crowd checking, I think it's also very the birdwatch. Now it has a new name recently, on Twitter. Also, I think has a lot of potential. So there are many initiatives, and I think that we are going to corner a little bit from here, a little bit from there, and we are going to go into the thing. But spam, we had a technological solution. Right? The bad content in social media had technological solution. We should be able to have technological solution to this as well. Yeah.
So Preslav, something that I was thinking about also during your talk was on related to the slide was on information consumption, right, and media literacy. So I was thinking, wondering whether technology and NLP in particular can do something more there. For instance, how do we show users the output of these claim verification systems, right? Some kind of an explanation that is maybe useful for a fact verification for maybe a news media outlet might not be useful for me as sort of a layman on that particular topic, right? So maybe there could be something we can do there with sort of personalization or adaptivity with respect to the end user, or maybe if I'm looking at some figures, right, plotted on some chart, right, there are several ways in which that information can be presented, and some of those ways could be misleading and happens all the time, right? So I'm wondering what more can be done.
Well, okay, so again, it depends what you want to achieve. If you want to convince people that this, explain to them, okay, the big goal to me should be to let people think for themselves. Okay, and to get them to this level. So, for example, one idea that I had was, look, if you look into this, I don't have time to show you demos, but we have several systems for this, but a system that does that, right? You input a text and it does this kind of thing, tells you here are the propaganda techniques, right? One problem is that if you do things in an adversarial way, that's not good. So to many people, they're so convinced of certain political views or certain conspiracy theories and whatever, you cannot convince them no matter what. Okay, and you also need to choose your battles, right? Those you cannot convince, those you can, they're users, right? But and one strategy is, okay, let me focus on those that those are already good. I don't need to worry about them. Those I cannot convince no matter what. Okay, because it's like football fans. My team is the best, period. They lost 3-0, 6-1 yesterday. No, they're better. That's it. You cannot convince me. And those in the center, this way you want to target. This is one answer. But there's another answer saying, no, they all should think, even those hardcore guys. And actually, I can do it. But what you're saying is something that is potentially confrontational, telling them, look, this is false because of blah. That's important for educational purposes, but you have to be careful how you do it, because if you tell me, that I like this kind of political view, or I like this kind of team, or I like this conspiracy theory, you tell me this is bad, this is not true because of this and that. If I'm really I can see it as an attack on myself, and on my views and all that, right? And then there are to be even more, right? So what can you do? Well, actually, I can teach you how you're being manipulated and without telling you you're wrong. Okay. So, for example, that I like this and I hate this. You say, okay, come, my friend. Let's take, the thing that you hate, and I'm going to explain to you, what kind of propaganda they have. And I'm going to show you all the bad things about this thing that you know is bad, okay? And you look into this and you say, yes, I knew it. But in the process, hopefully something here clicks and you actually understand how manipulation works. And next time you read kind of your favorite, fake news website, you might say, yeah, interesting. Why is that, right? So kind of, okay. Again, it's a complex problem. You also need to work with psychologists, right? You need to work with other kind of people. So people are telling us, kind of, I was listening to some work that says, look, I mean, there are other strategies that kind of try to understand, even on a specific, not necessarily trying to do it. Okay, the high level thing you want people to think, but you might also actually want to debunk this specific thing. Okay, and if you do it, one, it's not good to say this is false. I mean, you're sharing bad thing. If you do, better you kind of point to a fact-checking website. But actually, what you can do is you can try to understand the reason. So, for example, if somebody says, many people are dying from the vaccine, not from the disease. Okay. Now, instead of saying, no, it's not true, nobody has that, it's not confirmed and whatever, that's kind of, something the psychologists would say, this is not good. So what you should do is kind of understand the root. Okay, people are afraid of this. Okay. Now, what you say instead is, actually, evidence shows that there are many more people that actually get, many more deaths are prevented from the vaccines that actually happen because of the vaccine or something. Kind of, you're not saying they're wrong. You kind of do something that kind of acknowledge that might have a point, but kind of, yeah.
I'm mindful for the time.
And one last thing, I recently moved to the Mohammed bin Zayed University of Artificial Intelligence. I'm looking for postdocs. So anyway, if you're interested in opportunities, come talk to me.